Good morning, everyone. Today, I will be presenting on the topic India EU, a complex and dialectical relationship. This topic explores the historical, economic, and political evolution of the partnership between India and the European Union, highlighting both cooperation and differences in their trajectories. So, first of all, see the historical background. India has historically been a central node in international trade due to its strategic location along key maritime routes. The Indian Ocean's monsoon winds facilitated the movement of goods and people across continents. Ports along the Indian coast, especially the Malabar coast, became the hub for spices like pepper, cardamom, and nutmeg. These valuable commodities attracted not only the traders but also colonial ambitions. European explorers, first the Portuguese, then the Dutch, French, finally the British, came to India. This ultimately led to nearly 2 centuries of British colonization. Interestingly, in the year 1500, India accounted for 24.5% of global GDP, a number that fell drastically to just 3% by the time of its independence in 1947. Fascination with India's wealth led to significant historical events. Christopher Columbus' expedition in 1492 was actually aimed at finding a sea route to India. The Portuguese were the first to succeed in this quest when Vasco da Gama reached India by the Cape of Good Hope in 1498. Soon after, the Dutch East India Company was established in 1592 and the Cochin Kela became a major trading center. The British then followed and established significant settlements in Madras, Calcutta, Surat, and Bombay. This events laid the foundation for colonial rule in India. See the relationship the timeline of the relationship between India and India. India's formal diplomatic engagement with Europe began soon after the independence. In 1962, India established relation with European Economic Community, the precursors of the European Union. Over time, this relationship evolved in parallel with the EU's transformation from a common market into a political and economic union. India has maintained robust bilateral ties, especially with countries like France and Germany, and its relationship with the EU has grown independently of its colonial history with the UK. So, Cold War plays very important role. During Cold War, Europe was divided into two hostile blocs. India, instead of aligning with either, pioneered the non-aligned movement. The stance was not about neutrality but about preserving sovereignty and independent decision making in a polarized world. India's advocacy for peaceful coexistence was a strategic choice shaped by global power politics and its own experience of colonial exploitation. Now we'll see the commonalities between India and the European Union. Despite geographical distance and different historical paths, India and the EU share some important similarities. Both are diverse democratic entities. India as a single nation state and the EU as a supranational union, they both place high value on a rule of law, human rights, and inclusive development. Today, their cooperation has expanded beyond trade to include climate change, science, technology, and geopolitical concerns. Now, we'll see what are the key differences and challenges in relation between India and the European Union. However, differences remain. India is a sovereign modern state, whereas the EU is a post-modern entity that downplays border and emphasizes shared governance. The EU often promotes democracy and human rights in its foreign policy, while India avoids pushing its internal values on other countries. These different approaches sometimes, create friction in strategic dialogues. There are, institutional discomfort. India also finds it challenging to navigate the complex bureaucracy of the EU, which often issues mixed or conflicting signals. India find it more effective to deal directly with the powerful individual member states like France and Germany, especially. The EU struggle to develop a coherent foreign policy further complicates its relationship with strategic partners like India. So, The EU needs to redefine and assert its global role if it wants to remain relevant as a strategic partner. While Europe's global influence has declined since the Cold War, the EU as an institution has become more visible. As India and China rise, Europe must adopt to this shift. India too needs to re-engage with Europe not just as trading partner but as multifaceted ally in global governance. So, India's strategic shift post 1947, post independence, India faced immense challenges, illiteracy, poverty, and lack of infrastructure. It missed the industrial revolution due to colonialism and needed international partnership for development. India's foreign policy focused on peaceful coexistence, economic development, and active participation in global institutions like the non-aligned movement. The economic engagement between India and European Union, initially India viewed the European Common Market with skepticism, seeing it as a protectionist. However, over time, both sides sought mutual economic benefit. In 1962, India opened a mission in Brussels. In 1973, the first cooperation agreement was signed, followed by a broader agreement in 1981. Economic liberalization in the 1990s under Narasimha Rao government gave further movement to this partnership. Concluding my presentation, my topic, India-EU relation are both complex and evolving. While there are significant commonalities in values and interests, differences in institutional structure and foreign policy approaches persist. Nonetheless, both entities have much to gain from a closer strategic partnership. Rediscovering each other and finding common ground in multipolar world is the key to their future collaboration. Thank you guys.